room. Go live. Come on, YouTube. Go live. Let's do this. We got 100 of y'all waiting. We should be live. Just tell me in chat if we are live and we are good to go. And this is a big one. I had to pour my tea at 70 degrees today. 70 degrees because I wanted to get the live stream started as soon as possible for you guys. Welcome back to the first Tech Yesterday live stream of the month. There will be one more coming. So stay tuned and join in on chat, get relaxed. And if you got any lingering, dying questions, make sure you drop them during the chat and we'll try and answer them as best as we can. But let's get on to the first update here, the official power connector update from NVIDIA. And it looks like they're saying the problems arising from these cables melting were that the cables were not fully plugged in. So this is what we said in the previous live stream when we talked about this issue. I thought it was most likely going to be this. Of course, I think a lot of this is credit to Gamers Nexus they did two massive videos on this topic where they went really in depth. This second one here is just incredible, above and beyond. Really big credit to these guys for doing such amazing work. And the main conclusion here was that the melted cables were melting when the connectors weren't plugged in properly. So that is, in the previous live stream, we also did hint on my biggest critique of these connectors was that when you connect them, you don't get that real solid click. And so that's feedback for NVIDIA to say, hey, when you start do the next round of these 12-pin power cables, make sure you have a very solid click so people don't mistake them for leaving them half out of the socket and then having them melt. So it's good that that issue is resolved. It's just sad that it just had to, I guess, destroy a few RTX 4090s. Well, hopefully the 4090s didn't get destroyed. It was only the connectors because these things are pretty easy to replace. But replacing a whole 4090 due to a melted connector on that side is pretty bad. Though we've got the first story here, is NVIDIA in trouble? You know, on my live, on my page, my home YouTube page, I kept getting recommended a lot of these stories about, there was one guy talking about stocks as well, like NVIDIA's in massive trouble. So today we're gonna go through all the sales figures and whatnot and what we're seeing with NVIDIA's RTX 4080 and 4090, and we'll look at their quarterlies a little bit later in the stream as well, their quarter 3 financial results, where, to give you guys the lowdown, they're faring, at least from what I can tell, they're faring a lot better than Intel, that's for sure. So they're weathering the storm. I mean, all things considered, I think we're in one of the biggest tech recessions, if not the biggest tech recession that's already underway in our lifetimes. So the fact that they're selling out RTX 4090s at MSRP is actually insanely impressive on NVIDIA's behalf, if that makes any sense. But the RTX 4080, here's the sad thing, at least for NVIDIA, and the good thing for consumers is that the RTX 4080 is selling horrendously bad. Now, in our review, there was people in the comments like, Brian, these things are going to sell out at MSRP. People do not care. And this is where I'm coming from, the standpoint of, the market is not stupid, especially if we pull up this graph right here. The market isn't dumb, right? We can see this line right here. It's actually behind chat, sorry. But we can see here we had the massive rise in assets bought by the Federal Reserve, right? They're putting money in the economy, really putting out cheap money into the economy, and that caused the massive inflation that we've seen, I believe. And then we've got this, as we hinted at earlier in the year, around December last year, I was telling you guys this is starting to plateau off. And this was very dangerous because you're living in a world where printed money, we've got this insatiable hunger for cheap credit, right? The world's built on cheap credit since the GFC, since 2008. So as soon as this plateaus, you're in trouble. Like as the economies are in trouble, because basically what happens here is there's so much debt that needs to be repaid. And if there's not new cheap money to sort of overpower that cheap debt, then you're going to see a massive crash. Even if this plateaued off and stayed flat, which it actually looks like, and we can see here, it's starting to accelerate downwards. And this is a very scary trend, because if this accelerates downwards, that means we could be in for a Great Depression style event. And that's going to mean very cheap prices, but it also is going to mean a very tough economy, extremely tough economy, which means this is going back anyway. This is going back to the RTX 4080 sales, right? We've got now, at least in 2022, money's a lot tighter than it was in 2021, especially in 2020. So I think we can ascertain that from what we're seeing with this Federal Reserve assets here. And so when I make these predictions, I think the 4080 is going to sit on the shelves. Even in my review, I thought this thing wasn't going to sell well. I'm making that based off just what information we have and a calculated assumption, if that makes any sense. And what we're seeing here with the Japanese sales numbers, right? These are just raw online sales data. And you see here the 4090 is the top selling card. Like, that's actually surprising given that there's actually pretty good prices on other cards. For instance, the 3060 Ti, if you adjust that for American dollars, it's close to its MSRP, but it's a nice gaming graphics card model, the 6700, the 6750 XT. These are cards that are coming in the top 10. So they're giving out decent value for money, but you got this card that's in Japanese terms, Sanju Man, and that's 3 of these models are in the top 10 for the 4090. So in other words, actually 4 models of the 4090 are in the top 10. And then you've got the 4080, a newly released graphics card. This is newly released from NVIDIA, is not even in the top 10 sales. So the 4080 is selling abysmally poor, at least from what we can see from the Japanese numbers here. But if we go over to Tom's Hardware, they wrote up an article showing that the RTX 4080 figures. This was from, haircuts galore. We'll go into the haircuts a little bit later too. So you guys get comfortable in chat as well. So we will get to chat. We just got to get through the important topics. These are really pressing questions that I've seen in the comment sections. I've seen them online. People have messaged us behind the scenes. What's going on, Brian? Make sense of all this stuff. So what we're going to do is basically, in a nutshell, show you guys that the market isn't stupid, right? The free market, when you let the free market do its thing, it is not stupid, and it's going to price things where they should be. And what we're seeing here, the 4080 is overpriced. According to the market, the RTX 4080 is overpriced. A lot of people aren't buying these cards. They're sitting on the shelves, and so their perceived value is at least a lot worse than the RTX 4090. This is something a lot of reviewers got right when we look at the tech scene. I thought my biggest critiquing point of the RTX 4080 was that it really missed the mark in its cooler size. I thought its cooler size was too big, where I thought this card could have been very well utilized for mini ITX builders. But they missed out on that opportunity. So they just made a 4090 wannabe without even the value of a 4090. So we're seeing here in America, the Micro Center stock is extremely, like, they're already basically cards are sitting on the shelves in Micro Center. So 1,227 units is still on the shelves here. So it's pretty poor sales for the RTX 4080. It's performing bad. When we look at all different sources around the globe, the RTX 4080 sales are really bad. Now, whether this was NVIDIA's strategy to push people up to a 4090, I'd say no. Like, they want to sell 4080s, right? They want to sell any card, especially the 4080, where I think they're making more margins on this card, or higher profit margins, than they are in the RTX 4090, believe it or not. So there's that. Anyhow, we will move on now to the next part of this live stream, and that is the RTX 4080 scalper prices. People, do not go out and buy one of these cards for anywhere. Like, if you're even thinking about getting an RTX 4080, you're like, look, I want to get a 4080, $1,200 is okay. Don't, like, please wait. That would be my recommendation. Just wait for now. But even if you wanted to get a 4080, don't go and pay $1,500 for these cards. Like, is it just me, or is there still the dumb money is floating around? Like, there must be some dumb money floating around, because these are eBay sold listings for over $1,400, over $1,650 for a 4080, when you can literally, at least from, like, I checked this morning, you can go out and buy an RTX 4080 from Newegg for $1,250, and it's in stock, it's ready to ship. So I'm trying to figure out why these cards, why people are buying these scalper prices when these cards are actually in stock. There's 4080s in stock here. Sorry, I don't know why it's giving me the, yeah, this website. Okay, maybe that's why people aren't buying from Newegg. The website, the website doesn't work that well. Anyhow, $1,250 right here, and that's in stock, that's ready to ship. So there's actually a few of those models in stock, and people like, for instance, this gaming OC model's $1,270. I mean, I wouldn't buy this, but why would I buy an Eagle version for $1,400 on free bid when I can save $130 and get a better model? So I don't know why people are paying these scalper prices to begin with. It's something that sort of left me scratching my head. But speaking of the scalpers, there are a lot of these cards that are available, and a lot of these cards that are available. So we'll actually quickly interlude here with some free chat as well. So we are live, so do ask if you got some dying questions, do ask them as well. But I'm guessing you guys are really enjoying the analytics here, because chat's usually pretty quiet when we're going straight into the in-depth analysis. But okay, you guys are just enjoying the stuff. We'll continue on. We'll get on to chat later. We'll get on to that juicy chat later. But if we go to RTX 4080, right, take off the sold listings on eBay. So we won't look at the sold items. We'll just look at what's up for sale. These scalpers, these are all scalpers. These are all people buying these graphics cards and hoping that someone will not only pay this price here, but they've got to then pay. So they bought this for, say, $1,200. They're going to pay eBay 10%, I think it's like 12% fees. So you're going to pay eBay around $200, and they're going to pay shipping. So they're hoping to pocket $250 profit out of this, or $300 if they're charging shipping on top. Don't entertain this stuff. Just let it sit there. And eventually these people will have to drop their prices down to not only MSRP, but at those prices, if they're selling on eBay, they're going to lose money. And hopefully that's a lesson for the scalpers to learn the hard way. And they need to learn. They need to lose money so they can stop doing this dirty practice. As I got asked in the comments section about the RTX 4090, I was like, Brian, I want to get an RTX 4090 at 1600 MSRP. Just wait. NVIDIA wants to sell you an RTX 4090 at 1600 US dollars. Do not worry. Don't go get scalped on eBay. I mean, look at this. These are prices. Again, 4090s. People are paying $2,300 for them US. That's insane. This is a $1,600 card. Don't let them, even if it's an OC model or something like that, they might go for $1,700. You will get this card. Just wait a little while. They will come back in stock. Don't be that desperate to go get ripped off $600 and then entertain a scalper who's literally pocketing about $400 profit off your back. So that's the scalping situation right now. The 4080, I think, has left some of the scalpers in a really bad position. So there's some good news there. Scalpers will finally get what's coming their way. Just be patient. But in terms of NVIDIA's sales, the RTX 4080 is doing extremely poor. I think worse than NVIDIA thought it would. But the RTX 4090 is doing better. So I guess they balance each other out. Anyhow, before we move on to the next topic, we have here the coupon, the sponsor of today's live stream, SCD Keys. Make sure you check the link in the description below. Use that coupon BFTYC for a massive discount on Black Friday. You see there it's gone down to 14 bucks. Legit single end user license. And let's get onto this juicy topic right now, and that is the price cuts are official in the US. They've come for AMD's AM5. This is where the price cuts. We were talking about this like over a week ago. We're talking about price cuts for AM5. People were calling me absolutely crazy. People like, Brian, AMD's not already going to drop their prices on the Ryzen 7000 series. But sure enough, we looked at the... People are just, sorry, people are like, hey man, I'm watching your live streams. Like, I'm gonna put my phone, like, it's on silent already. People are messaging me on Skype and Facebook. I'm watching the live streams. Like, thanks brothers, thanks for tuning in. I will interact in chat very soon with y'all. But what we got here is a situation of AMD having to take a haircut. Now, people were telling me I was a total, I didn't understand anything about the market. I didn't understand economics. These prices were just like a one-day sale. in China for Black Friday or some. I think China is a special event on the 11th of the 11th. So the 11th of November, it's a really special day in China for sales. But I'm thinking to myself, no, look at the sales of Ryzen 7000. They're actually terrible. AM4 sales are really good, but AM5 sales are really bad. It's almost indicative of, say, X299. That was really bad for Intel. That's why they haven't been too keen to push out any more X299-like platforms. But also, Threadripper was relatively bad too. That's why you haven't seen a new Threadripper coming to the market too soon, because I think motherboard manufacturers and also retailers, all these affiliated channels don't want to be left with all this stock. Sometimes a lot of these guys lose money on this stuff. So you have to make sure that your platform is not only very appealing, but it can also move quite fast in terms of volume. So when volume's not happening, when volume sales are not happening, prices will drop. And that's what we've already seen here with AMD CPUs. All the models, the 7950X is now down to $574. That's buy it now prices. That's actually insane on how quickly that dropped down in price after only being out for a little over a month now. So it shows you that if you're hearing on the news that we're not in a recession, I would just ignore that advice. We're in a recession already, especially when it comes to tech. We're in the biggest tech recession, and it's only just getting started. I mean, all the crypto bros, they're all running for the hills. The crypto bros are like looking for a hideout now. And yeah, tech companies are having to take massive haircuts. So NVIDIA will be next. Don't worry. NVIDIA, Intel, all these guys will have to take haircuts on their products and start shaving down their margins. Because if they don't become competitive, then people are not going to buy their products. It's that simple, guys. I remember I heard, and we'll move over to the big screen here. I remember I heard people were saying to me, people were like, Brian, this is a matter of people are just so blind. They're going to buy whatever NVIDIA puts out in front of them. And I'm thinking to myself, no. You've seen the GTX 1630 already, right? If you look at the GTX 1630, we can actually look at the GTX 1630 right now. And if we look at the GTX 1630 right now, this thing's in stock. This thing's in stock. The prices are getting slashed. In fact, it's apparently a Black Friday deal for $130 for a GTX 1630. This is not a deal. This thing is just sitting in shelves. No real enthusiast is buying this card. It is not a good value card. There are so many better options out there, and this is on the lower end. So if NVIDIA can't entice people to buy a card for $150, for example, then that shows you the market isn't stupid. NVIDIA can't just come out and price something at whatever price they want, and people are going to accept it, especially now that the economic conditions are getting tougher. And it's looking like, again, when we go back to the cheat sheet here, this is the one cheat sheet you guys need to save in your browsers. This is, I call it the Federal Reserve cheat sheet, the biggest central bank in the world that basically, the central bank that can create the reserve currency of the world. So you want to watch what these guys are doing. Huge dependency on economic guidance, at least in terms of pricing going forward when you look at this sheet. So what we're seeing here is this is on the way down. Basically, money is getting sucked out of the economy via the Fed. They're destroying money, if that's the simple way of putting it. So when you're destroying money, what's happening? The dollar's getting more scarce. People are running and trying to get a dollar more than they did at least in 2021, 2020. So be aware of that. Be aware of that. And so when that happens, what happens with products, right? This is what happens with the GTX 1630 or the RTX 4080. People are then more conscious of what they're buying. And this spans into the lower end of the market, where even if it's a $150 purchase, people are going to do their research and they're going to look for the best value. And so this is what, in a nutshell, free market capitalism is supposed to be. If someone like the Fed gets out of the way and lets the economy do its thing, the companies that provide the best value, provide the best innovation, will get rewarded. So do not fear. NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel, they're not only competing against each other, but they're having to compete against themselves. And this is a huge thing that you're going to see start to unwind in the next few years, more than it's ever happened in the past, because in the past, at least the last decade, we've just had cheap dollar after cheap dollar getting thrown into the equation. Now, we're going to go into the next topic here. This segues perfect into the next topic. Let me just get my cup of tea. Let me just get my cup of tea right here, fellas. Have a little. I put a honey. I got this honey throat candy, right? So it helps my voice. So I drop it in the cup of tea. And because it's winter and it's really dry, I need to keep my throat moisturized, so to speak, lubricated. And so this is, it's great to have a cup of tea while we're doing a live stream in winter. But what we got here, the latest on layoffs. Look at all these jobs getting lost in the tech sector. Now, the biggest of all is this one right here. We're going to pay particular attention to this one. This is the Amazon job cuts. Amazon on November 14th announced that they're cutting 10,000 jobs. This is going into Christmas, going into Black Friday, right? Two of the biggest sales periods of the year, and Amazon's cutting jobs. So I think it's in the US, Amazon accounts for, I think it's over 50% of online sales, or so it's something huge like that. Amazon's absolutely massive. So if they're cutting jobs going into the busiest period of the year, what should that tell you about the economy? It's doing terrible. So this one here was actually shocked me when I heard it, right? If we're looking at Facebook or if we're looking at Twitter, I mean, Twitter's getting thrown upside down. Musk is really going into Twitter and just throwing a spanner in the works there. So that's a unique example where you've got a different CEO with different objectives really coming in and shaking things up. But if we look at Facebook, Facebook was on the decline. But if we look at Amazon, right, that's the one that we need to pay attention to, where we're seeing 10,000 jobs get cut going into the busiest time of the year. So perhaps the busiest time of the year isn't going to be so busy. And then after that, they also announced there's more job cuts coming in 2023. So in other words, after the busiest time of the year, more people are going to be laid off. So that's kind of like a scary thing if you're working at Amazon right now, because you're like, okay, after Christmas, am I going to lose my job? So yeah, and apparently in total, right, this is what I've read. You've had more layoffs coming to the tech sector this year than you had in the year 2000 when the whole tech bubble burst. So that's some scary indicators right now. We get over to chat where things will get a little bit more lively and a little bit more positive. And but as King points out in chat, 10,000 job cuts for Amazon is nothing. They hired 500K since 2020. So that's a good point to make. You guys in chat as well, great point to make. And one thing about Amazon as well is I've got a friend here locally that works at Amazon in the data center. And I actually talked to him about this in person, and we were having some drinks on a Sunday night. And he was telling me with Amazon, right, they're really going to cut the fat out of the business. They're going to cut the fat out of the business. Anyone who's not doing their job from here on in is just going to get cut. It's that simple. So a lot of companies like Amazon are not only just cutting people, but they're really cutting the fat off and staying lean. They want to stay as lean as possible. So that's something that you're going to see with a lot of businesses. They're going to really have to tighten up now that these economic conditions are getting tight as well. So it's going to flow through in correlation, right? Tight economic conditions, companies will have to tighten the belt up. And even at Tech City, you're going to see me lose a little bit of weight here. You're going to see me maybe pumping out more videos. I'm going to have to go lean in this tech recession as well to give you guys the best content you've ever seen. Like, it's just going to have to go another notch above better. So there's better, there's Tech City right above that. That's what I'm going to have to do. We also got a donation here from, hey, would you blow me? You got me again, man. I love that name. You can I just got an RX 6800 XT for 579 Canadian dollars yesterday. Brand new. The store labeled it wrong. Everyone keep their eye open for screw-ups. That's another thing too as well. Definitely great advice there. Considering it's in Canada, right? Is that 579 Canadian dollars? Wow, that's an absolute bargain. A friend of mine in Australia was telling me he got an RTX 3080 for around $300 and I think it was $40. So do keep your eye out. As we looked at yesterday as well, as we looked at with the video we did yesterday with the AliExpress, right? Use this as a base price. RX 580, 8GB. If you're deal hunting locally, use these as a base price, right? $70. Just use this, $70, RX 580. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's the 2048 stream processors. Use it as a base guide to say, hey, I can get a brand new RX 580 for $70 well, $71 shipped, drop your prices. So you'll be able to pick up an RX 588 gig now locally for around $40. That's my guess. That's all I'm prepared to pay for it after seeing this. So there you go. Prices are coming down, and especially they're coming down on the low end, where we've seen GTX 1660 Supers go for amazing prices too. A lot of these cards, keep in mind, a lot of these cards are from crypto benches. I will be guiding you guys through once I get back to Australia, which is coming very soon as well. We're moving back to Australia very soon. We are going to have some awesome content coming there with used hustle, picking up deals, all that stuff. Because one thing about tech, yes, right? In 2020, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I was like, there was such a boom. I've never seen anything like it in 2020, especially when in Australia, when all this cheap money was just flowing around. They were just handing out people money. If their business dropped off 30% in Australia, you could get like free money, essentially 750 Aussie dollars a week from the government. So there was just like, people were just getting free money. It was just so cheap. It was so easy. It was just flowing in 2020. Now, I was selling PCs hardcore that time. People were like, Brian, why are you out in the pandemic? You know, like, shouldn't you be at home? I'm like, well, I don't have to be home. I'm going to go hustle. And the reason I was doing that is because I was, you know, when it rains, it pours. So if the economic conditions are good, get your buckets out, start soaking up all that money, and then save it, right, for a rainy day. And now the rainy days come. Actually, yeah, when it rains, it pours. It's kind of like, that's a weird analogy. We're using it both ways here, the rainy day. But it's rainy in a bad way. It's like a thunderstorm now. And people want to stay inside. They don't want to buy anything. But now you've got that option now where you've saved up that coin to go buy those bargains. So we also got another $2 donation from Haywood again. And I think it's the same as the Australian. Yeah, Canadian and Australian dollars are very similar. That's why it's that 6800 XT. I'd say we can actually check what you got that for. 579 CAD to USD. So you got a 6800 XT brand new for 433 bucks. Yeah, that's exceptionally good value. Really good value there, my man. Good job. You definitely picked up an absolute bargain on that one. So wherever we look, it's bad news for the economy, right? We've got here from Bloomberg, US banks are tightening lending standards as well, raising to the risk of a recession. And so what we're seeing here is when money gets tight, right, banks only want pristine collateral. As we said in a previous live stream, I heard of someone who was unemployed and then they had a job for 3 weeks, and in Australia, they were able to borrow $500,000 Australian dollars. Let that sink in. That was in 2020. Now, you have that same person go to the bank and try and borrow $500,000 now. The bank will reject them, right? So they're tightening their lending standards. They're not lending to people who don't have pristine collateral. Something that if things go south, the bank can basically confiscate and then resell it to the market. So there's no lending willy-nilly in 2022 anymore. Now that adds, of course, when that slows down, because I believe money is created via these loans. When a loan is created, there's also new money created into existence. And so when that happens, right, and when you have these tightening lending standards, essentially inflation will be on the way down, believe it or not. So back to these 3 scenarios here is we had hyperinflation, where the line was just like, woo, going through the roof. Like the browser would be off the charts here. That was a scenario where we had hyperinflation. And that was what the market demanded the Federal Reserve do if they wanted to keep up the same GDP, essentially, where the higher prices feed the higher prices. But what happens in that sense is you have a lot and so much imbalance. When you have price instability, you've already got examples in history of what happens. Weimar Republic, you've got Zimbabwe. These countries are classical examples. You've got Argentina. All these countries have high inflation. Their economies are ruined because there's no price stability. There's no easy forward guidance. So the Fed has a mandate to keep the stability of prices under control, and they're actually starting to do their job, believe it or not. So, and then what happens is you're going to have this tightening lending standards. I believe what we're going to see is a margin catastrophe that's on the way. And that's when essentially, we've already seen it with crypto. Crypto's already having the margin catastrophe, ladies and gentlemen. And so this is moving into, and you're probably like, well, what's this got to do with graphics card prices? Well, everything, right? So when people have less money, they're going to not buy products like gaming products, right? A PC, a CPU, a GPU or a fancy new case. They're going to go with the budget stuff. And so you're going to see the low end will be actually have a floor. And we saw this, right? Over the last couple of months, we've actually seen this. Perfect example. RX 6600, right? Perfect graphics card that's sort of bottomed out at around $180 if we're looking at the AliExpress M variant, right? Is bottomed out at $180. It actually went down to $170, went back up to $180. So it goes to show you that there is price floors. But when we're moving on to tightening conditions, right, the higher end generally will drop faster, which is why for me, I was surprised to see the RTX 4090 selling so well at $1,600 US. But again, back to the people who are worried about an RTX 4090 never being in stock, do not fear. An RTX 4090 is coming back in stock for $1,600 US. Do not worry about that. Yeah, so there's that big concern that people had. And in fact, it'll probably get cheaper as we go into January and February. You may even see an RTX 4090 going down to $1,500 US, $1,400 US. So there's that. We got here, asked a question from Commodore Fan 64. What's your thoughts on mini AMD APU PCs? Well, we've got to see I want to see their latest APUs come out. So I'm really waiting for their latest APUs to hit the shelves with DDR5. That would be really cool. So I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully AMD can deliver. And yeah, so also we got to ask, is my audio desynced? It actually might a little bit. It might be a little bit desynced. I haven't checked that, so hopefully it's not too bad. But here we'll finish off with the problems that are mounting in the economy and why you should seriously. And also a great question, Brian. Aren't you supposed to spend more as inflation is high? And this is where we get back to a very interesting scenario right now. And this is what, like, if you guys, I've studied, from what I study with the Great Depression, I can only give you guys some examples here. There's people who believe the Great Depression was caused by governments more than it was caused by overbearing lending standards or tightening lending standards. And this is because what we're seeing now is actually there's some similarities between what people have said happened with the Great Depression and what's happening now. And that is when you start regulating the free market, when you put in limitations on where companies can invest their money, and you start restricting companies from providing. Okay, the audio is slightly faster than the video. I haven't changed anything, so that might be YouTube's bad. Their servers might be slightly synced slower this time or something. Yeah, something's going on there. Okay, if it's really annoying you guys, I can see what I can see what I can do. Okay, let's see if we can get something like that. Okay, see if I can fix the sync on live stream. I think I may have fixed it for you guys. So we've dropped in a 200 millisecond delay on the camera. So hopefully it's not as bad now. You guys are like, yeah, these lips are synced up with his mouth now. So I think it might have resynced. Actually, yeah, you might be right. The audio may have desynced because my Streamlabs software updated itself. So I just off-synced it by 200 milliseconds. So, okay. Yeah, so anyhow, getting back to the similarities between the Great Depression and now is that governments back then restricted trade. They increased certain tariffs. They made things, they just limited the economy and limited what the free market can do. Now, if we look at what's happening now, right, look at coal imports and all that. They're limiting coal. They're limiting production on oil. They're limiting companies from investing money in these in resources, right? And so a lot of companies don't want to go out and make a new oil rig or make a new this and that, because essentially what that means is you've got less of these products now being restricted by government. You got less investment coming in, so that's going to cause inflation because there's just less of that product in circulation. And so when that happens, you've got inflation induced by the government, but then you've got actually deflationary monetary conditions. So this is why it's called the inflationary depression, right? This is why people have predicted that we're going to see a inflationary depression because of these conditions. And what we're looking at, basically when we look at the monetary conditions, right? When we look at the monetary conditions, they're tightening. They actually are tightening. And if they get so bad, then you'll go, this is what I mean. Like, let this just sink in, right? This is nothing positive, but I'll try and give it a positive spin. You should have some cash outside of the bank, because what happens in these scenarios, right, is you've got these companies that are competing with other product services that you essentially need. You've got what's called staple items, right? Everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs electricity. Everyone needs, say for instance, a lot of people need cars, they need transport. If these things are going up in price due to those restrictive natures placed on the products and services being offered in that area, then the other areas like gaming, right? You don't need a gaming PC to live. You can't eat your gaming PC. I mean, I have seen Dr. Ian Cuttress trying to eat silicon, but he's never actually followed through with it. I just see his mouth on the actual wafer, and that's it. If things get that bad, you actually may see Dr. Cuttress actually biting into that silicon, right? He's going to need to eat. The problem is he's going to learn the hard way that he might want to spend his money on something else, like actual food. So now you've got competition from staples versus discretionary items. And so the discretionary items naturally fall a lot faster, even in an inflationary environment. So hopefully that makes sense on what's going on. You've got food prices going up. You've got gas prices going up, electricity prices going up, but then you've got tech prices coming down. So very weird scenario, one that none of us have lived through. None of us have lived through this. This is what the craziest thing of all this is. None of us to this day have lived through this exact moment of what's going on. I can only just get a glimpse of what's happening and try and connect the dots for you guys and give you some advice going forward. And I'm definitely telling you now, you'll want to have some cash out of the bank, because what happens when these companies don't sell things, right? And they've got all this debt. Let's go back to this article. We actually brought this article up before. And thanks for the $2 donation, my man. Shampoo time, catching you live by chance. No notification. Thank you. Thank you for just going to the channel and seeing if Tech Yes is live. That is awesome. So what we got here is corporate borrowers. This is this Yahoo Finance article. Very interesting. Corporate borrowers have 300% more debt than before the 2008 financial crisis. Now, interest rates are higher, at least in the US. They're going higher than they were. So if interest rates keep going up, this is like doomsday for the US economy. Companies with real estate loans have a lot more debt in the system than people realized. So what happens when a lot of these non-necessities, right? If we go corporate borrowers, right? This would be NVIDIA, this would be a lot of different companies out there, AMD, Intel. If these companies have all this debt, right, and they're not moving their products, this can spell absolute catastrophe for not just the companies, but the banks who lent money for these companies. Now, if your money is at a bank, this is where it gets serious. Like, I can put on a happy face, but I've also got to put on my serious face too. If your money's at the bank that's lent these companies all this money, which I guarantee you, a lot of your money at a bank that's lent these companies money is being lent to these companies indirectly. And so if they start defaulting, essentially, I mean, I'm not going to say that NVIDIA or something like that, but I'm going to say there's a lot of tech companies out there that will have bad balance sheets. They will default. There's a lot of zombie companies out there. If they start defaulting, that then goes back on the bank. The bank's got to sell their assets and get what they can back for them. And if they're essentially overpriced assets on the balance sheet, which I believe, have a look at FTX, crypto. Isn't this exchange apparently had like 26 billion worth of assets, and they're worth nothing now because there were assets that were essentially air. They were pricing thin air at $26 billion, and banks were lending on that. So how irresponsible were the banks that have your money? They have your money and they're lending to people like FTX. In other words, the more this cascades and the more this builds up, the more you might want to think about just getting some cash out of the bank. That's all I'm saying. I've got some cash out of the bank. I'm happy. And you know, it's funny. 2021, I remember I went to the bank to get some cash out, and the lady just looked at me. Like, she looked at me. I'll put this on the screen. I just like, oh, you know, can I get a couple of $1,000 out of the bank? She just looked at me, scratching my head. Like, she's like, why would you get cash out of the bank? Why would you do that? And I'm just thinking to myself, like, is this woman okay? Like, some of us still prefer to use cash. Like, I just want some cash because A, if I'm going to buy a deal, for instance, if I'm going to go pick up a deal, some people prefer just to take cash. There's no have to wait 24 hours for a bank deposit to confirm a new customer. There's no way he can get scammed. There's no way I can get scammed. Cash is great for picking up tech deals, but I didn't really explain that to her. But it's like, there's all these people now that think cash is like the worst thing. And it's like, well, you tell that to the people who had their money in FTX crypto, right? In Australia, I think even in Australia, right? Even in Australia, FTX Australia. We'll go back to this one. Even in Australia, there was like over $42 million in deposits. $42 million in Australian money was with this FTX crypto exchange when there's actually proper Australian regulated crypto exchanges with the owners in Australia. So why would Australians bother going with this FTX crew? And then not only that, leaving their money on this exchange. So they went bust. So a lot of these people went bust and lost their money while the Sam Bankman-Fried, he was off partying in the Bahamas with client funds. So what a situation we are in where, and this is what I tell people. I told people this last year, guys. I told people this last year when I said, be careful with crypto. I said, be very careful. You can go back and watch some of those live streams. They're there for people to see. The archives are there. And a lot of you guys in chat will know that Tech Yes was just keeping it real. I was just telling you, like, a lot of people are going to lose money. That was what I was saying. And I was getting called like, Brian, crypto's going up forever. GPU prices are never going to come down. All this jargon that you hear from the crypto believers. And it's sad because now you're seeing the reverse happening, but it's happening where people are actually being seriously debilitated by losing their equity. And yeah, like, gamers rejoice, but like, part of me, like, I think it's the golden age of PC gaming right now, but isn't it like, it's funny, it's like you're building a gaming PC in your little solace, but then all around you, the world is burning. That's kind of like the feeling I'm getting right now. But again, yeah. And someone in chat says people forget about Mt. Gox. Exactly. I never forgot about Mt. Gox. In fact, in 2000, when that was out, like, I remember telling people this site was absolute garbage. Mt. Gox, their response times and the way their website worked, if you compared that to a proper currency exchange, like even Oanda, for example, their website was just trash. And this was a company that was moving millions of dollars a day. And people were just like, Mt. Gox is amazing, Brian. I'm like, guys, Bitcoin might be okay, but keep your money away from Mt. Gox. And it was funny, after I said that, people were coming back and said, oh man, I should have listened. It's like, it's too late, right? It's too late. I had a friend, my best friend here in Japan. He's the guy I handed my job on to at the high school, right? I handed my job on to him. If you guys have been watching for a long time, you'll know that I gave Damien, he's a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, I gave him my job. We're at a barbecue in April, right? In April this year, we're at a barbecue. And I told the guy, I said to him, I said, Damien, how much have you got in crypto? And he said, quite a bit, like half my savings. And I said, okay, sell it all. I said, sell your Bitcoin, sell your Ethereum, he had these interest earning tokens as well. And he was telling me that they were so good. And I was like, Damien, just sell it all, man. Yeah, Tokyo Goomba. You guys remember? Yeah, it's Damo. I said to him, you can actually go and ask him on his Instagram too. And I was telling him in April, I said, sell all your stuff, sell all your crypto. And he's like, oh man, but I might lose a couple of $1,000s. I said, you are going to lose more. Look at this. Look at the cheat sheet. I pulled up the cheat sheet for him. I said, look at this, right? Look at this. It's going down. Money's being destroyed. What do you think is going to happen to the price of a doggy coin? That's going to get destroyed too. Because it doesn't provide any real services to the world. It doesn't provide any value to your life. I mean, I certainly haven't really experienced any value from crypto in my life up until this point, except maybe the exception of XRP, where it does help facilitate. I think it facilitates transactions over the Wise network. So Wise is really good. Wise, you can transfer money internationally extremely quick. But he's got all these doggy coins, he's got all these fancy interest earning coins and all this stuff, like just telling me the lowdown about how crypto is going to go back up again. And I said, dude, it's going to get a lot worse. So just sell your stuff now. If you got a couple of $1,000s, you'll be happy in hindsight that you made this call. Lose a couple of $1,000s now, or potentially lose a lot later. It could go back up. I don't know if the Fed pivots, right? That's always something you can be aware of. But again, as an individual, as a sole user of whatever it is, the biggest advantage you have is you can react. If you look at previous events, right? If you look at the Lehman collapse, I think it was the Lehman collapse will show you how slow some of these bigger entities are to move. Lehman collapsed, and I think it wasn't until 10 days later, ladies and gentlemen, that the S&P then crashed 25%. So if you're a small investor and you were quick on your feet, you could have analyzed that news and even sat on it for 24 hours, 48 hours, and made a pretty informed decision on where you were going. So a lot of people, remember guys, bears make money, bulls make money, but pigs get slaughtered. And that's the one thing that's happening right now is a sad analogy. I don't mean to call the retail investor a pig, but that's the analogy that Wall Street gives the retail investor, a lot of the retail investors who aren't quick to react. They leave their money on exchanges like FTX. They leave their money on these exchanges, and now they've lost it all, man. That money's gone. It's non-existent now. They're not gonna get it back. It's all gone. It's all been swindled away, unless the Federal Reserve prints up some new money and pays for it. But I don't think the Fed are too keen to do that. But yeah, hopefully that spill has been... Anyway, let's get back to the story with my friend, right? With Damien. So now we're coming in, in summer. It comes July. So I meet up with him again in July. We go to the park, kiddies are playing around at the park. They're doing their thing. They're on the monkey bars. And I said to him, like, while my kid was on the monkey bars, I said, look, have you still got your money on the crypto? And he said, yeah, I still got my money on it. I think it's going to go back up. And I said, look at that kid. Look at my kid on the monkey bars, right? That's the usual retail investor. They're swinging around on the monkey bars. And then guess what happens? They come into a bar that's oiled up and they slip and they fall straight on their back. And I said, that's going to be you if you don't take your money out of crypto. And that was in July. And then he messages me the other day and he's like, oh man, FML. And I'm like, yeah, bro, like this is the sad reality. That's my best friend. If I cannot convince my best friend to sell his crypto, I don't know how I can convince anyone else. That's all I'm saying. Except until I have a track record and people then start to trust me. But hopefully this is the beginning of a track record where I can help out the average person not lose money and become more competitive and become more efficient. Because this is like serious talk, right? This is real talk. And yeah, basically how you got to think of it when you buy anything now. When you're buying anything, ladies and gentlemen, always look at the price versus the value. What are you paying? What's your dollar worth versus what you're getting? Now, we haven't seen hyperinflation. Again, going back to these numbers, if you start to see this sheet right here, if you start to see this start to go skyrocketing out of control, like the Weimar Republic, if you pull up a Weimar Republic graph, this is even documented back. If we pull this up, yeah, this is what you're going to see in a hyperinflation event. Now, you got to remember these numbers here, like early on, these numbers for the Weimar Republic, this is like taken out of a scale, like absolute insanity. Look at that graph. That's what you're looking out for with the Weimar Republic versus the Federal Reserve. I would say we're sort of, I don't know if we're coming up even to here, but the warning signs are there, right? This was the warning signs. This is why people are predicting we're going through a Weimar Republic stage. Are we at this first peak here? And are we coming down just a little bit right now? So you're looking for that pivot, right? If you see now a massive pivot from the Federal Reserve, you know which way we're going. We're heading into this one. And this is a log, what's it called? A log scale as well. You can see here, these are exponentially growing numbers as well. So if you were to do this in a regular chart, I couldn't even put it on like 15 monitors or 200 monitors. This line, look how the log scale goes up here. This line is just like Superman rocketing from here to the sun. That's how much the money supply increased in the Weimar Republic, right? But the first warning sign was here in this lower base where the money supply increased and then it capped off. We could be in this stage right now, right? So I'm telling people, just be aware of what's going on. We may have deflation for the next couple of years, but then or another 6 months, and then if it pivots, you know what you got to do. You got to get out of dollars if that happens. But in the meantime, your dollars are essentially, until this pivot happens, your dollars are going to get stronger in terms of their purchasing power. But it comes back down. So what this all boils back down to is, sorry, I'll get back to chat soon. We're just finished. We'll go over to half an hour chat soon. We're finishing off with the last final story here, right? This is the last final story for you guys. The clock, it's 9 o'clock. The dial is going close to 11 o'clock, but we'll join in chat soon. What happens here is when you're spending money, right? Always look at who you're giving it to, right? If I even said to my best friend, Damien, I said, hey, Damien, give me $1,000. Even if I asked Damien for $1,000, he wouldn't give me money. He would be like, I'm not going to give Brian $1,000. And that's my best friend. My best friend wouldn't even give me $1,000 to invest. Yet, what's the problem here where Damien's giving, say for instance, I got to apologize for Damien using his name on live stream, but it's an example here that I want people to learn from and not make the same mistake. Why would then Damien go out and give someone on FTX all his savings? He doesn't know these guys. He's never met these people before. Would you go out on the streets, ladies and gentlemen? Would you go out on the streets and give people randomly money to invest? Absolutely no. I've never seen it in my life. I've never heard of it. Someone on the street approaches me, hey, Brian, do you want to give me $10,000 and I'll invest it for you? I'd be like, what? Like, what's your picks? And then he says, then after this, right? And then he says to me, this guy on the street then says to me, Brian, I've got some doggy coins. At that stage, I'd be like, dude, are you drunk? Like, what's going on here? But this is what happened, right? This is what happened in crypto. This is what happened. You got people giving money to people they don't even know, and they're selling them doggy coins. Let me just take that. That's finishing off the topics for today. That's finishing off the topics for today. I cannot. Brian's the worst friend ever. Dude, if Damien listened to me, he would be like tens of thousands of dollars better off right now. How am I the worst friend? Come on, man. Hopefully you're being sarcastic. Yeah. So we got doggy coins anyway. So someone's trying to sell me a doggy coin, and they're like, say for instance, some guy comes on the street and says, give me $10,000, I'll sell you some doggy coins. Now, if someone comes to me on the street, right? If someone comes to me on the street and says, hey, Brian, I got these baked beans. I check them out. I open up one can and I check out the goods. I give it a taste test. I'm like, okay, these baked beans are good. He's like, I'll give you 10 cans for $10. We got a deal, right? I'm able to inspect the product. It's reasonably priced. I know what I'm getting. So, yeah. Anyhow, that's the finishing up of the topics here today, ladies and gentlemen. But oh yeah, sorry, we'll go over to NVIDIA's balance sheet. We forgot to talk about NVIDIA's balance sheet. This will be the final topic. Then we'll move on to chat. NVIDIA's balance sheet right here, right? We've got the Q3 financial year, right? These are the numbers that have come out. Now, one thing to note with NVIDIA is compared to last quarter, they're doing a little bit better, but compared to the last year, they're still down by quite a lot, right? Their operating expenses are up. Their balance sheet, their operating income, very important to look at this because this is looking at if a company's losing money or not. So NVIDIA is not losing money at this point in time. So their net income, they're still profitable. So I think like NVIDIA stock, in my opinion, is still overpriced. But if we at least compare that to Intel, right, they're still profitable. Intel's actually losing money. They had an earnings loss, right, per share. So Intel's losing money. That's why Intel's in dire straits right now. This is why Intel is going to be cutting jobs. I haven't seen NVIDIA cut jobs at this point in time, but Intel's in dire straits. Everything is down in the Intel. Everything's down. down, right? Intel, down 17%, down 27%. Wait, this one's up, the network and edge group's up. So some of their smaller categories are up, but most of their big categories, especially data center, this one's huge. This one's down 27%. If we look at NVIDIA, actually it's a mixed bag. And overall, they are performing, I'd say in comparison to Intel, they are performing a lot better. So up over the quarter, their margins are up. They're not in a loss. They're still making money. So they're doing okay. I mean, considering last year for NVIDIA was the biggest year ever, right? They had crypto miners buying up all their GPUs. They were just selling GPUs like hotcakes, and with caramel sauce as well. I don't know if you've got to try hotcakes with caramel sauce and cream. It tastes pretty good. But that's what happened last year. I'd say they're weathering the storm so far quite well. That's what when I look at NVIDIA's quarters. So I think they're not in dire straits. I think Intel's in dire straits right now. Intel's really going to have to make some decisions, especially that Arc GPU division. Man, that's been a lot of R&D, a lot of money invested in that. And all they've got so far is a mid-range card that prices are crashing on mid-range cards already. You've got the RX 6600. I'd much rather buy an RX 6600 right now than an Arc 770. That's just me. So unless I needed, I think it's AV1 encoding, which is actually a very good point with the Arc 770, especially the 16 gigabyte version. That one could have some good case uses. But if we look at NVIDIA's numbers, right, their third quarter revenue was up from a year ago, right, in the data center. This is huge, huge. So their data center, actually, a lot of like big Amazons and a lot of big companies like that are actually buying up and replacing or adding new stock to their inventories. Gaming's down, right? This is the biggest one. The gaming inventory is down. But how much of that is crypto, right? How much of that was cryptocurrency? I'd say a lot of that was crypto. Huge amounts of crypto buying up gaming graphics cards. And then we've got here the professional visualization, down 65%. And then we've got here automotive and embedded, up 86%. Now, an interesting, something to inference from this was very interesting for me personally, was that if you guys noticed their live stream for the RTX 4090, did you notice how there was always cars? Like they were doing this demo with little races, and it was just like a lot of that presentation was talking about cars. And if you've got a number that's 86% from a year ago, there is massive growth in that market. So in other words, NVIDIA is prioritizing automotive and embedded because it's one of the fastest growing industries, at least from their standpoint. So that's huge growth for them there, even in what considers a tough market. So the two biggest markets for NVIDIA, well, one of the biggest growth markets combined with one of the biggest markets already, they're growing. So NVIDIA seems like it's in okay shape, especially versus Intel. Have to wait for AMD's numbers to come out to analyze those. But it looks like out of the three, AMD and NVIDIA are weathering this storm a lot better than Intel are. So that's something to draw out of this. So you'll start seeing some radical changes in Intel, I think, before you see any changes in NVIDIA or AMD. So they're the company to watch right now. Keep your eyes on Intel because their tax rate, look at this, their tax rate was 642% because basically they're paying forward taxes for last year, which last year was good. So the reason this number is so absurd here for Intel is that they're paying forward taxes when they're losing money now. So next year, Intel will have a lot lower of a tax bill than they do this year. So anyway, hopefully we made all sense of that. We can move over now to some Q&A. If you guys have some absolute like dying questions you need to get out of the way, drop them in chat and I'll answer them as best as I can. But also the RTX 4080's MSRPs in Australia. Again, I think this card is underwhelming. I said that in the review. I think it's overshadowed by so many different angles right now. It's the card that's stuck in the middle of a rock and a hard place. It's got nowhere to go, essentially, but down in price. So a lot of these people that were saying, like I remember I was watching a lot of people getting frustrated. A lot of people were getting frustrated that NVIDIA cards were selling. And it's like, guys, if the market prices these cards, then so be it. You don't have to worry. Especially if you want to get a graphics card, if you want to get a new NVIDIA graphics card for cheaper, you don't have to worry so much. They will come down in price, or they will at least back down to their MSRPs. But GAAP's the official reporting figure. It's what they have to. It's a general accepted accounting principles versus the non-GAAP. So if you're looking at gap versus non-gap, I believe non-gap is like, okay, we had basically we had a heap of these parties in 2021 and we had to put that on the balance sheet, but usually we don't have to have all these parties, or usually we don't have to do all these promotions, so we can save these costs. So we've got the gap versus the non-gap. A lot of investors like to look at the non-gap because essentially that's showing you how effective a company could be if they weren't to sort of entertain all these extras that they're doing right now. So can you please guide how I can find the Japanese site you browse for top selling tech GPUs? Okay, you're looking at kakaku.com. It's basically price.com. It's a website a lot of people use to get, of course, the best price. So you got these website kakaku.com. I'll write it in chat for you. kakaku.com. So that's the one there, kakaku.com. And then from there, you can just, the easiest way to do it would be to just look for a graphics card, and it's just got the rankings. So you can see here, we've typed in RTX 4090. It's all in Japanese, mind you, but I think you can translate if you want to. Then you can click on a card like this, RTX 4090, then you can click on the ranking here, and it'll bring up the ranking of, okay, so this morning, so it shifts daily, right? They update their website daily, but you'll get a general indication of which cards are selling quite well, even if you look at this over a week. So right now, the best-selling card today is the RTX 3060 Ti from kakaku.com. And so what they do is they get you a list of all the different websites that are selling this graphics card, and they give you the best price. It's actually brilliant. This website is brilliant. I wish we had something. We do have something like this in Australia, but it's not as efficient and not as effective as kakaku.com. Extremely good website. So whoever, and this website's been around for like, over a decade at least, from my knowledge. So if it works, don't need to fix it. And this site works extremely well. So, hey guys, upgrading to a 5800X 3D from a 5600 worth it, as I mainly play MMO RPGs, and I heard the performance difference is like 50. Yeah, okay, I wanted to do for you guys, I really wanted to do an MMO benchmark guide. The problem, this is the biggest problem that benchmarkers face when they try to do MMOs, is essentially, it'd be two problems. Trust. We need someone to actually lend us your account that's in the most populated place. And so if I can get that game, quickly download it, log in via your account, and then I can benchmark the area, that's going to be great. So if someone's got an account, if someone has an MMO account, they're willing to just email me and say, hey, Brian, do you want to use my MMO account for benchmarking? It's in a populated place in the map where a lot of people are going. I'd love to do that and give you guys a video. It's just I don't have time to, say, purchase World of Warcraft, get a monthly subscription, and then level up a character to get to that really busy area where people want to benchmark. I think no benchmarker has that time on their hands to do that. And so that's why you don't see a lot of MMO benchmarks included. As opposed to, say, booting up a game like Far Cry 6. You just boot it up, whack in the settings, and use the in-game benchmark tool, which works extremely well. It's got a lot of effects going on. It's got a lot of characters moving around. Of course, it's different in that it doesn't have a lot of internet packets being relayed. So that's where the difference comes in. How well can these MMOs, or how well can these CPUs handle MMOs? So sharing accounts gets a ban though, yeah. So that's the problem, right? It's hard to benchmark MMOs at this point in time. And so, yeah, account sharing is not allowed. And so it's hard for guys like us to benchmark it. So if you guys can give me a benchmark that I can download and with relative ease, say for instance, World of Warcraft, can I use the free version and just quickly run? I know if there's a starting point in World of Warcraft where you can quickly run to the Horde's main city. I haven't played in a long time, but World of Warcraft, if I can download it for free, quickly boot up a new character and run into that big Horde city, it only takes like a couple of minutes. I can do a benchmark with that. But if one of you guys can get some get some correlations for me here, where you can compare that Horde city to, say, the most populated area in World of Warcraft right now, that will give me an indication of, okay, is my benchmarks on the right track for MMOs? And I can include that in the numbers for you. So World of Warcraft could be a nightmare to benchmark. Can't get the raid to do the same thing every time, and then there's the open world testing. Yeah, I know it's hard, right? So yeah, they're always changing, but it's still good. Like, I'd still like to see it firsthand. That's all. WoW is not demanding. Okay, well, that's what I mean. I'm not an MMO player, but I want to benchmark this because a lot of people request it. They want to know the differences between. A lot of people do, man. Like, I look on forums. A lot of people, like, when they're buying gaming PCs, they want to know how it performs in World of Warcraft. So, yeah, that's all. So that would be a very interesting benchmark. If you guys can give us the one game that really tanks performance in a populated area, I'd love to know what it is. So that would be interesting to see. So it's up to you guys. Hit me on Twitter. Hit me on Twitter if you figure out which is the most demanding MMO benchmark to run and how to do it so easy. And then I'll try and do that for you. So that's the biggest one. So Mike Bruswan, he says, Brian, has the Data Epic versus Xeon real market share free from Intel Associate Network and financial analysis manipulation? Sorry, I don't know the question. You gotta rephrase that for a question if you can, my man. I don't do much. Like, I haven't looked into the data center too much. I'm just looking at the quarterlies mainly with that, looking at the numbers there. So I appreciate this level-headed side of your channel about the global situation. You are making people aware. Thanks. Yeah, I want to make people more aware as well, because it's always, and trust me when I say this, it's always the small guy that ends up getting screwed. And for me, I have an allegiance to the small guy, right? The small guy allows me to do YouTube. The small guy tunes in, watches my channel, supports me. We have jokes. We do all this stuff together. It's the small guy that I relate with, and it's the small guy that keeps this whole economy going. It always is. Yet the corporate world, or at least the crony corporate world, there actually is good players in the corporate world. Believe it or not, in the corporate world itself, you've got this shadow system that exists, right? You've got good people in the corporate world, you've got bad people in the corporate world. You've got the crony capitalists, and then you've got the actual free market capitalists. And so if we look at a company like Suntory, for example, in Japan, the drink company, they just make drinks, but they're very pro-free market capitalists. So you'll never find a bad price on a Suntory bottle of alcohol. You'll never find a bad price on Suntory drinks. Their philosophy is great for free market capitalism, right? Provide the best product at the best price. And they're the companies you want to support and put your weight behind. And it's these other companies that just fancy. FTX crypto company, perfect example of a company you do not want to support because A, it's gone bankrupt now, but even in then, you got to ask yourself, what service and product is this person providing for the market? And they were just providing a Ponzi scheme in hindsight, which is really sad, right? So many poor fellas lost their money on this, so that was just really sad to hear. But yeah, Anyway, guys, let's continue on with the Q&A. So, why AliExpress won't ship to the UK anymore? I have no idea. I have not looked into that. The good thing about Japan is you can get stuff shipped here tax-free. So there's no taxes on the AliExpress imports. As opposed to the Australian government in Australia, they impose the 10% GST mandatory from AliExpress's side. So every time you buy something from AliExpress in Australia, you have to pay 10% tax on top of it. So the government cracked down on that in Australia. They just want their taxes, man, no matter what. In Japan, it's still a lot more free market-ish. So Japan's a great place too. I'm loving Japan because the inflation's a lot lower than it is in Australia right now. And yeah, that's probably the main. Your dollar goes a lot further in Japan right now than it does in, I would dare say, anywhere else in the world. Your dollar's going a lot further in Japan than it does, especially given the exchange rates, than the rest of the world. So there's that aspect. So yeah, whew. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I do have to wind down in 20 minutes though, so I've only got 20 minutes left on live stream because my son wants to go see the new One Piece movie. I don't know if it's new, like it's been in the cinemas for a couple of weeks at least, so he wants to go see the One Piece movie. So we're gonna go see the One Piece movie, and it's all gonna be in Japanese, so I probably won't understand half of it, but I'll gumbutter. I'll do my best. Don't you pay import tax when you bring stuff over $1,000 into Oz? Yeah, that's true. You do. You pay. Generally, it depends though. That's very dependent on where the product's from as well. If the product's from Taiwan, for example, and it's not manufactured in Australia, then you don't pay taxes on it. So there's a lot more to that law than meets the eye there. Isn't MMO just about clock speeds? Absolutely not. MMOs, a lot of people are finding it's numerous factors. I mean, how well the game's coded, for example, but also about level 3 cache is really important. Some people are saying that. So I want to investigate an MMO. I want to actually do a lot of different scenarios on the benchmarks with one of the most demanding MMOs, or if we can get our hands on 2 of them, and then we can test AM4 versus AM5, DDR4 versus DDR5, AMD versus NVIDIA drivers. The list goes on. I do want to get to the bottom of MMOs because a lot of the times they don't change and they're very single thread dependent. So if the CPU has strong IPC and it's got higher clock speeds too, then yes, it could do really well. Sorry, I should change the screen. Should change the screen around so we're not staring at this FTX crap. Yeah, so a quick question. What GPU do you recommend for Generation 3 or 4 i5 build? Oh, I mean, a Gen 4 i5, I'd be going with like a 1050, man. GTX 1050 will go mate perfectly, or a 1050 Ti. I wouldn't go with a Gen 3. I'd go with a Gen 4 if you can, due to AVX2. It is a benefit if you can get it, and they both use DDR3. So I'd be going with like a GTX 1050 Ti or a GTX 760, 770. They're not too bad, but the 1050 Ti does have the latest drivers. I never try AMD GPU. There is any issue with AMD GPU. I'm waiting, okay? So look, when it comes to AMD versus NVIDIA, at least for gaming, the gaming differences, it's like, I think AMD, the RX 6600 is an amazing value graphics card. When it comes to being a content creator, I'm going to tell you this. I use NVIDIA graphics cards. I got CUDA there for Adobe. Works flawlessly. Actually, the 2023 update for Adobe Premiere Pro surprised me. I haven't had one hiccup so far. So they're finally fixing their stuff. But on NVIDIA's side, the drivers work extremely well. Then we've got if you've got a capture card or you're a creator in that sense, the NVIDIA drivers work a lot better with capture cards, or the NVIDIA hardware even from the get-go. So AMD have a lot to catch up on the creator side for their graphics cards and their driver set. For instance, even just a quick feedback, why does AMD leave DHCP on by default? So if you install a new build and you've got a capture card with an AMD graphics card, basically what's happening is it'll have this DHCP setting enabled by default. So as soon as you plug up a capture card, you get a black screen, and it'll be like, then you have to unplug your capture card, plug it up directly, take off DHCP, restart the system. And then you've got the other problem with AMD capture cards is that if your monitor is a higher refresh rate than the capture card, then what will happen is the AMD graphics card won't detect the capture card's refresh rate, and it'll try and boost the refresh rate of the monitor. And so that'll black out your capture card and your screen if you're in a game that then suddenly wants to go to a higher refresh rate. So there is problems, and these have existed for years, and AMD have not addressed these problems. HDCP. Thanks for correcting me. Sorry. These are problems that existed in the AMD driver set for years. No one talks about them. I just thought you guys tune into the live streams. You love the live streams. I'll talk about them live. I don't mind. But I was going to monitor these problems over the years to see if AMD fixed them. And they haven't fixed them, which sadly tells me that perhaps AMD don't have someone that tests out a variety of scenarios on their own driver set. And they just don't, I don't know. Like that's the problem right now between AMD versus NVIDIA drivers. There are problems that I can easily replicate, make a video right now showing you the difference between NVIDIA and AMD on the creator side, and it's better to have an NVIDIA card on the creator side. But when it comes to AMD on the gaming side, they're offering really good value. You won't come into these problems if you don't have a capture card. You won't come into these problems if you're not really editing videos in Adobe Premiere Pro. But again, just being real with you guys, not like... That's, you know, and selling a PC as well. When I sell a PC to streamers, I've had, oh, just a second, guys. Hi. come on, bro. Like, you know, dude, the guy literally knocks on my door, rings my buzzer, so he can give me some spam mail. Like, and I'm like, it's not like I live on the, you know, I live on the 5th floor too. It's not like I live close to the bottom floor. Man, people are getting desperate, eh? Like, it goes, you can tell it's live. Yeah, guys. Look, there's no playing around. This is a real live stream. So he came to give me some spam mail. And I'm just like, thanks, bro. Like, really, thanks. Appreciate some spam mail climbing 5 flights of stairs. Ugh, I guess, hey, man, guy's got to hustle, I guess. Can't blame him, so... Oh, you guys would reckon it was the AMD assassin. It's like, Brian's talking bad about AMD's drivers. It's not even talking bad. I'm just talking truth. You know, the AMD assassin comes over, and then, like, there's probably, like, a heap of fanboys with pitchforks out behind him. So, it's weird, though. Like, it's funny because I guess I got called, like, an Intel and NVIDIA fanboy, but recently I've been very positive with the 5800X3D. I think that's surprise from AMD fanboys. I was very positive with the X3D. Thought that was a great upgrade option, great CPU for gaming. The RX 580, 8GB, brand new at $70. That's a pretty good buy too. So there's some really good buys out at the moment. I don't, yeah, again, with brands, it's like brands shouldn't exist to you. It should be price versus value. That is the ultimate goal. Just look at that. Ultimate goal, price versus value. Are you getting a good deal? So... what do you recommend for the RX 5800 X3D? So a good cooler. I do recommend a good $20 Snowman cooler, for example. The Wavibo and the Snowman, they're both really good CPU coolers. They're $20. I paired that up with the B550. B550 is all you need. You can go with the B450 as well, but you only get PCIe 3. And so if you're going with a high-end GPU like a RTX 4090, I would entertain that little bit extra for the PCIe 4 on the B550. I think that's a great choice. 32GB of RAM, you can just go with some 3600 megahertz stuff, save some coin, or of course, if you want to get a little bit better 3600 megahertz memory, you can tune that a little bit more. But do keep in mind, if you're using 4 sticks of memory with a 5800 X3D, I'm not entirely sure how high you can get that memory to before things start having problems. Now, one thing I will be talking about in an upcoming motherboard review is the AM5 versus at least 7000 series IMC versus 13th gen IMC. I've recently found some big differences, especially when it comes to running 128 gigabytes across 4 sticks or 4 DIMMs. The Intel IMC is a lot better than the AMD IMC. And that exposes it. 128 gigabytes on 4 DIMMs will expose that. In fact, I messaged G-Skill behind the scenes, and I was like, what's going on here? So I messaged G-Skill behind the scenes, and they said they were surprised that I was able to boot at 4800 megahertz on 128 gigabytes on a 7950X. And then they said, you know, the Intel, you might have different results. And so I got 5800 megahertz on 128 gigabytes stable on the Intel system. So there's that for you guys. If you're on a workstation and you're using 128 gigabytes of RAM, that might be another I missed that in the review. I completely missed that because I didn't have 128 gigabytes of high-speed sticks on hand. We got Woofy Lotion, the Knock, Norwegian Krona, 500 Norwegian Krona. Thank you, my man. Here is some real spam. Have fun after this stream. Thank you, brother. Man, that makes me happy, man. You know, actually, I'll share on Twitter. Like, I was going to share it. It's like my boy, right? My son. I'm really, like, last night, you probably noticed there's a bit of happiness in tech, yes. My little boy, he wrote Santa a letter because he's coming to Australia with us, right? So he wants his Christmas present to be in Japan, right? So he wrote Santa a letter and almost brought me to tears how cute kids can be, man. He wrote Santa a letter. Then he also went out and got Santa some snacks. So he had his little snack pile. He offered Santa some snacks. And then he also offered Santa some books to read and then some toothpaste. After Santa's done eating the snacks and reading his comic books, he can then brush his teeth as well and be on his way. After, of course, in exchange for the present. But I was like, man, my boy understands. You know, put a good foot forward and you'll get your present. So Santa's delivering him that Pokemon Violet, you know what I mean? So Pokemon Violet, there's this new Pokemon game on the Nintendo Switch. So that was That was just a real wholesome story about my little boy. I'll share the photo for you guys on Twitter too. You can check that out. But yeah, it was really cute, man. So it was just, man, like, yeah, moments like that, man, everything's worth, you know. And you think people like, man, fanboy a tech company? It's like, nah, fanboy moments like that, man. That's what life's all about. Hey, Brian, why did you leave Japan? No, I'm in Japan still. Initially, why did I leave Japan? That was a story. We're not going to bring it up on live stream. Why did I leave Japan initially? It was a lot going on. A lot of it was from, we had, you know, me in particular, we had to grow. We had to learn a lot about ourselves. And hopefully you guys have seen me grow over the years on this channel as well. I mean, part of me, I want to bring back, though, like there's some good parts in the past I really want to bring back. I want to bring back the fun. I want to bring back the sarcasm. I really want to have a lot of fun going forward when we get back to Australia especially. And hopefully we can deliver that. I'll be actually engaging with you guys for active feedback and seeing where we can push the lines in terms of having fun. So this channel is going to take a very different direction. But Japan's always been a good teacher, man. It's taught me a lot, especially in the last 6 months. I thought I was healthy before I came to Japan, but I actually wasn't. I think my health was actually pretty poor. Japan really is like, you got to eat, like, you really got to take care of your diet and exercise. And I got to stress this. Exercise, cardiovascular exercise is so important. I'm going to just give you guys an interlude here. But also there's other things like make sure your lights in your house. This is the latest thing I'm changing over, 2200K or 2200 Kelvin lights. If you can, make sure they're CFL, especially if you're a guy, a male. I think blue light affects males more than it affects females. There's other things as well, like with your health as well. Make sure, for instance, you're eating, you know, you're eating just not processed foods. I think that's the biggest thing. But basically with me, I had athlete's foot. I had athlete's foot after the Corsair event. I did the Corsair event back in May this year. It was really brutal, right? It was extremely brutal. I don't know if I've shared this story with you guys on a live stream, but this will be the final story for today. Back in May, I got athlete's foot because I was out on my feet in the rain. It was raining. I was wearing these sports shoes with all the breathable mesh, and my feet were extremely, extremely wet. And the Corsair event was in Tokyo. I couldn't duck home, dry my feet out, change my shoes. And then after the event, they're like, let's go to dinner. I'm like, okay, let's go to dinner. And I ended up getting home, and the next day, all the skin just fell off both my feet. It was brutal, man. It was like down to layer 1. Like I lost 2 layers of skin on my feet. And I didn't think anything of it because I've never had athlete's foot before. But then like a week later, I started getting all these blisters on my feet. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And this continued on for like 2 months. And then one foot, it healed properly. It healed fine. But then the second foot, only in like the last month has it been fixed. And that was after I started really getting into exercise. I started eating a grapefruit for breakfast. So I stopped eating the pancakes for breakfast. I stopped. The pancakes was a big one. Like I love pancakes in the morning. So I stopped eating pancakes and substituted that for a grapefruit. And that really made a huge difference. So there's exercise and, of course, getting a good, healthy breakfast. So the onions, of course, the onions and tomatoes are huge. Actually, I snack on as well. And I was snacking on, say, for instance, I'd be snacking on like a muesli bars and stuff like that. I've substituted snacking on snacks for just mini tomatoes. So that's my snacks during the day now, mini tomatoes. So just really eating wholesome, fellas. Athlete's foot is all gone now, right? So there it is. Gone. Gonski. So it's telling you the biggest, like one thing and oatmeal, of course, great. No, oatmeal is great, man. Oatmeal is great for you. One thing is, if this is one thing you can notice straight away, it's a great indicator that things aren't going so well, is if your toenails are starting to grow really slow. That's actually a bad indicator for your body. So if your toenails are growing slow, you have to change what you're doing right now. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. If the toenails are growing slow, then you got to change up your exercise and your diet. So if your toenails are growing fast and you're cutting them every, say, month or 2, that's good. So there it is. Bang. There's a little cheat sheet. I always give you guys cheat sheets as well. We had the Federal Reserve cheat sheet. Now I'm giving you guys, oh wait, this is the hyperinflation cheat sheet now. I'm giving you guys the health cheat sheet. Just look at your toenails. And if they're growing slow, that means something's wrong. So there it is. Anyhow, guys, always keep it real. Toenail tech, yes, city. There it is. Who measures the time it takes for toenails to grow? You should notice these things, man. Like, where's your inbuilt calculator, bro? Like, are you taking? You gotta get that inbuilt calculator working, man. Otherwise, you'll be going on eBay getting scalped for an RTX 4080 for $1,600. Like, that's what I mean. That's why people are getting scammed left, right, and center. They're losing their money because their inbuilt calculator, something's a little bit off. So you got to get that inbuilt calculator working, man. Your natural calculator, the in-body edition. It's the most wholesome, man. Is once a day cutting bad? Oh man, that's great, dude. You're like a werewolf or something, bro. That's insane. Yes, that's it. This stream is Toenail City. So, But I'm glad you guys in the chat are doing really good. Yeah, my nails grow fast, so I'm good, I guess. But for instance, my fingernails were growing really fast, but my toenails were growing really slow. But now my toenails are growing fast. So in the last few months. So corrected it all, brothers. Corrected it all. So I just thought I'd share that hot tip with you guys. And you may notice the energy is going to start getting better as well. Like all these things, I just forgot. I guess I got lazy. COVID made me bunker down and lazy. So yeah, doesn't werewolves, like, don't their toes grow really fast, like werewolf toes? Hey, Brian, how to overcome burnt out from life stress? I can give you the real, do you want the real answer? Do you want the real answer? How to overcome burnout? If you guys want the real answer, I can tell you the answer to that one. How to overcome burnout from life stress. I had this last year, right? I had that burnout, okay? You just got to stop being a little crybaby. There it is. Okay, you want the answer? How to overcome burnout? Just stop being a crybaby. And that's what I was, a crybaby. Last year I was being a bit of a crybaby. And now that's it. There's your that's the advice you probably didn't want to hear. But yeah, just stop being a crybaby. That's I mean, and another thing is too, like, you've got to. Another thing is too, yeah, it's a matter of perspective, man. Like, it's a matter of perspective. You know, there's like, there are guys out there, man. There are guys out there who are probably like, you know, the sad thing is, there's guys out there that are homeless, right? I'm going to say this straight up. There's guys out there that are homeless. I've met homeless people that are really happy, right? They're not burnt out. They're really happy, right? So if a homeless dude with like literally a grim outlook can be happy, you know, it's something like you just got to, it's all your mentality, right? It's all up in your mentality, man. So it's all your attitude. So, yeah. So, but did you get child custody at what age? So now we're sharing, you know, me and the misso are sharing custody, so it's fine. Everything's back to normal, at least in, yeah, I'm going to breathe that air. That's what we're going to do. Anyway, guys, I got to cut this one off. The movies, my boy, they're going to be waiting. I got to go cut this one off. Got to go to the cinemas. Got to cut this one off. Okay, I gotta cut this one off, guys. Gotta go see that. Gotta go see that One Piece. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I'll put some timetables in later in this afternoon, and I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I hope it was. We got one more coming before I go back to Australia. We got one more coming. So if you've got a pressing concern, make sure you drop it in the comment section. Also, hit that like button for us, and yeah, make sure you comment. Help out the algorithm. Help keep tech yes. Helping the average guy, right? It's like was it Jerry Maguire? Help me to help you. I love that line, that movie. So this is what Tech Yes is all about. Help me to help you. So make sure you just hit that like button. And if you haven't already, hit that sub button, ring that bell, get the content as soon as it drops. smash that comment section for us. And also, yeah, topics you guys want us to talk about in the next live stream. I'll be happy to deliver. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thanks for all the donations and thanks for everything. Love each and every one of you, and make sure stay positive. There it is, guys. And I'll catch you next time.